Monkey D. Luffy enters people's lives like a bat out of hell, or a monkey out of hell, or a giant rubber fist imbued with the kinetic embodiment of willpower, covered in lightning, soaring out of the heavens over a floating island with the skull of a giant ogre. Okay, alright, I kind of started on a tangent there, but hear me out, I do have a point. Luffy has had such a massive effect on the other lives of the Straw Hats, and it really got me thinking, what would their lives actually be like if he hadn't come screaming in, changing everything up and recruiting them left, right, and center to his hectic pirate crew? So unfortunately, the more I looked into it, the worse it actually looked. Deaths from starvation to living an eternal life of solitude amongst the corpses of your best friends. Yeah, so life without Luffy would not be good for the Straw Hats. And in this video, I'm going to go in deep and tell you exactly where each of them would have ended up had a certain monkey boy not shown up in their lives. Alright, so let's get started with Zoro. So after he left Shimotsuki village, he almost immediately got lost. Like, what else would you expect from Zoro, honestly? But yeah, he got so lost and he ran out of money that he began to use his already impressive swordsman skills at this stage to begin bounty hunting so that he could make some money and just eat. This directionless travel of his eventually led him to Orangetown, and wouldn't you know it, as he's walking through the market center, minding his own business, he spies a massive wolf that's attacked a young girl. So what happens next? I'm sure a lot of people know this, but not everyone does. It's actually different in the manga than in the anime. I'm going to stick with the manga because it is cold as ice. So Zoro just straight up kills the wolf. He murders it to save this young girl. Well, this doesn't go down so well with Helmeppo, who it turns out he's the dog's owner. And next thing you know, Zoro is tied up to a pole at the Navy base and has agreed to go 30 days without food or water to kind of wipe his slate clean. This is where Luffy finds Zoro, 9 days into his starving and dehydrated endeavor to prove a point. I think we can all agree that Zoro's resolve is far too strong to actually die from 30 days with no food and water. Like his willpower and his sleeping conqueror's haki mentality, the mentality that leads to conqueror's haki, would have him powering on. But Helmeppo tells Luffy that in 3 days' time he's just going to execute him anyway. So this is something that Zoro would not be able to deal with under these circumstances. So Zoro's mentality on day 12, so it's day 9 when Luffy meets him, he's going to execute him in 3 days, so it's day 12 we're looking at. It would be kind of just chilling. Zoro's mentality would be kind of chilling. Today's going to be the same as yesterday, tomorrow's going to be the same as today, nothing's going to happen till day 30, whether he betrays me or not. If Helmeppo just surprised him, if he lines up a firing squad in front of him and just executed him and shot him, Zoro's out, guys. He's out. If he gave him a trial by combat or something, then sure, different story. Like, Zoro is just incredible and so strong and everything, but a starved and dehydrated Zoro with his arms bound, completely out of range of these, in range of the guns, but out of range of any attacks he can do, he cannot take bullets. Guns were still relevant at this stage of the story. If Luffy hadn't have arrived when he did and recruited Zoro, if he didn't luckily get the info that Zoro was going to get betrayed and step in, then the vice captain of the Straw Hats, the destined wielder of Enma and Shusui for a time, the Nidai Kitetsu, all these awesome things would be dead at the hands of Helmeppo. So Nami met Luffy when she was under the heavy influence of Arlong. Nami began working really hard to purchase Kokoyashi village from Arlong, believing that once she accrued, I think it was 100 million belly, that Arlong would leave and let them all live happily ever after. You know, that's very positive of you, Nami. But now that I say it out loud, it's actually quite similar to Helmeppo and the way that Arlong had no intention of letting Nami leave his crew, Helmeppo had no intention of letting Zoro actually survive. Nami would be allowed to pay her due to buy forgiveness or freedom, much like Zoro's hunger strike, then to only be defeated at the most soul-crushing time. But no, she was so good at map making, Arlong just couldn't let her leave his crew. He even gave her a whole office to just cartograph, draw maps, cartography, cartograph. She couldn't turn to the marine police force because of guys like Captain Nezumi, who was accepting bribes from Arlong the whole time. So even if Nami, all the residents of Kokoyashi village, or the whole island for that matter, had gone to the government for help, they wouldn't have received anything. What if the Marines did rock up and just took more money, you know? It's a good reason to show up on the island and get a little bit of pocket money. If Luffy wasn't around to help Nami escape, she would have had a hectic mental break when she finally made the 100 million, only to have Arlong steal it from her and tell her that all she'd been working for years was for nothing. And her whole community was still in such a dire situation. No, without Luffy, she's either trapped in Arlong's crew or very likely met an unfortunate end by a marine like Nezumi, who we already know from her backstory he's not scared to shoot civilians. And that's not even mentioning Orangetown and Buggy. He had Nami captured when she stole his map of the Grand Line, and while she does have skills as a cat burglar, I don't think we can 100% count on her being able to escape by herself. Like, if you strip away the main character plot armor, you could definitely imagine Buggy shooting the little thief he caught out of a giant cannon with a buggy ball or something. Remember, she's got plot armor. Without Luffy, she doesn't have that. None of the Straw Hats do. There's a good chance that her story ends at Orangetown at the hands of the mighty, the soon-to-be Yonko, Buggy D. Clown. Usopp met Luffy, Luffy met Usopp in Syrup Village, Usopp's hometown, right around the time that his childhood friend Kaya is in the middle of a very dangerous plot to steal her wealth. This arc actually gets lots of flack, but I enjoyed it. It might be nostalgia because it's one of the first that I watched as a kid. In Australia, we used to watch it before school on this TV show called Cheese TV, and I always loved Captain Kuro as an antagonist. He was awesome, he was super fast, but he was also smart and able to put a plan together. He was the first instance we got in the One Piece universe of a villain that was playing the long con. He was a planner, he was a schemer, he was like a mob boss. He paved the way for pirates like Crocodile and Dofi, not in the world of One Piece, but in our eyes as the viewers. All of this means that he is way out of Usopp's league in literally every avenue. Smarts, strength, speed, everything. Without Luffy, Zoro, and Nami showing up, Captain Kuro's plan goes off without a hitch. Kai would have continued to fade away under the eyes of a fake butler pirate, and when Usopp likely found out, he probably would have mercilessly killed by the veteran pirate. Actually, any one of Kuro's crewmates, his subordinates, could have absolutely clapped Usopp. The creepy cat cosplayers, the Nyanban brothers, despite how weird they are far too fast and strong for Usopp at this stage. They even gave Zoro and Luffy a hard time, like a really hard time. And also, Usopp is at the peak of his cowardice when we meet him. He doesn't have the grit in him yet to face his fears. He doesn't know how to calm himself down and begin to think around problems, like we've seen him do in Alabasta and Ennie's lobby in pre-time skip. Also the Sky Islands like Skypiea, or say in Dressrosa in the post-time skip. No, without Luffy, poor Usopp, his story actually ends before it even begins. Now that I think about it though, if that was how Usopp went down, you know that the word of that would have gotten back to Yasop, and then the Red Hair Pirates would have came, and that would be awesome. So Sanji is more of a long con than Zoro. I actually reckon that Sanji and the chefs from Baratie could have defeated Don Krieg's crew. The thing that really would have given them a lot of trouble is the toxic gas. But you never know, they could hide in the restaurant and turn on the heavy-duty exhaust fans in the kitchen to funnel it out or something like that. Remember, Zeph spent a year on the Grand Line and was actually kicking the shit out of Luffy in that arc, so he spent a lot more time on the Grand Line than Don Krieg or Luffy even ever did. There's one point where Gin sneaks up on him and has him at gunpoint, but you could easily make the argument that he could have broken out at any time, use some of his superhuman speed that he helped Sanji nurture to really blitz Gin. There's also the appearance of Mihawk to mention, so I really think they'd be fine. Mihawk's a big wild card. Anyhow, that's not my point. My main point is that if Sanji didn't meet Luffy and hypothetically lived a comparatively peaceful life, there is a chance that Germa 66 never found out that he had survived and he lives his quiet, peaceful life on the Baratie. However, that's no fun for this video. So let's just assume that the magnificent chef, the best in Eats Blue, grows in fame at the already famous floating restaurant until one day word makes it all the way back to the ears of Germa 66 or the Big Mom Pirates, whichever it gets to first. He would have received a little letter demanding his attendance at his own wedding from Big Mom. This is where Sanji is really in trouble. There is zero chance that Sanji, who likely hasn't awakened Diablo Jumbe, he's nowhere near as strong as he was after 2 years training on Kamabaka Island. There's no way he's got anything at his disposal to resist the Big Mom Pirates or his Germa 66 family. He goes to the wedding and he gets killed unceremoniously. I'm so sorry. There's no bullet dodging, there's no observation haki, nothing. Don't tell me that Luffy would have stopped it, because the only reason Luffy was there is to retrieve his best buddy, his chef, his crew member Sanji. Through Luffy, Sanji's been put in situations and made choices to make him the strongest he is ever going to be. He still got bodied by his brothers and his dad. He got put in a situation where he was about to get murdered. So without Luffy and the life that Luffy opened up to him, the strength that he found along that path, he's dead. So Chopper lived a fairly isolated life in the Drum Kingdom. He did have, Dr. Correa, who loved him, cared for him, and also taught him a significant amount of his medical knowledge. But the rest of the humans living there thought he was a monster. They thought he was some kind of abominable snowman, some kind of yeti. And the other reindeer that lived there, they shunned him for having a blue nose. Poor Chopper. So Chop and Correa lived under the tyrannical rule of Mr. Munch Munch himself, Walpole. And Walpole is the reason that Dr. Hiruluk ended up dying. And remember, at the time, Chopper considered him his only friend. He was also the second half of the mentor figures that taught Chopper everything he knows. Chopper didn't have a leadership position in the community, so it fell to people like Dalton to try and usurp Walpole. However, the fact that Walpole, he had all the doctors of the country under his command, and he also had support from a capable crew that actually knew each other, that knew how to work together in combat and stuff, and access to a surprisingly strong devil fruit. By the time that Chopper was actually really ready to stand up to Walpole, the Straw Hats had already arrived at the Drum Kingdom. Luffy did give Chopper a new lease on life. Luffy saved Chopper and Drum Island as a whole from the evil king who didn't really care for any of them, or he didn't care at all. I don't think Walpole would have necessarily killed Chopper, but Chopper, he wasn't capable of dealing with him. Without the intervention of the Straw Hats, Chopper would likely have just continued studying under Correa and just living a quiet life under Walpole. That's the best case scenario. He could have stood up to Walpole, lost, and then ended up really, really hurt or killed. We meet Nico Robin as a main antagonist under the pseudonym of Miss All Sunday, where she's the right-hand woman of Sir Crocodile, the Shichibukai, and leader of Baroque Works. We find out right at the end of the arc that the relationship between these two is not actually as peachy as it looks from the outside. No, Crocodile is just using Robin so that he can have her read the poneglyphs and help him to acquire one of the ancient legendary weapons. The predicament that Nico Robin got herself into means that while she is using Crocodile to get her own access to the poneglyph, and as a means of having a safe place to stay away from the watchful eyes of the government, is a life for her, she's also completely under his thumb, under his rule. Physically, there's nothing she can do when it inevitably does come to blows. Even though she's smart enough to be prepared, she has a vial of water and a knife to try and take him out, at least to, buy herself some time to escape. Crocodile himself is simply too smart. He's too powerful with his Logia Devil Fruit ability. He's not young, he's old, he's experienced. In this particular exchange between them, Crocodile stabs her through the chest. It's brutal, it's nuts. If Luffy and the Straw Hats had not come to Alabasta when they did, and Vivi of course, had Luffy not defeated Crocodile and had a very convenient ship just waiting for Robin to stow away on, she would have been imprisoned and forced to help Crocodile decipher the poneglyphs. We already know he has a cage with Kairoseki bars. She'd have no hope of escape. Oh god, it's Robin. She probably has a chance to escape. But the government's not coming to help her. They've been looking for her whole life. Oh, and another thing. She had CP9 after her. So yeah, eventually word would have reached the government that a lady called Miss All Sunday who can sprout arms and looks like Nico Robin has appeared in Alabasta. And guess who's going to get sent there to pick her up? Even if it were just Bluno, the lowest ranking member of CP9, Robin would get absolutely bodied. She can't break his neck, she can't break his back. He can just use Iron Body and just stand there and stare at her. So while I do think Robin has the capability to play the long game and, escape from Crocodile, it would really only be a matter of time before the world government catches up to her and apprehends her. It kills me to say that, but that's what I think would happen. Speaking of CP9, we get to Frankie. So while Frankie has arguably taken a back seat post-time skip, he still remains as a favourite among the fans and among me. I love Frankie. He lived a very happy life in Water 7, building and repairing ships and having his own scrapyard with a bunch of loyal employees he called his family. The Frankie family, weren't they funny? Unknowingly to Frankie, the government agency CP9 took up residency in his hometown of Water 7. Not only that, they'd gone deep undercover in his childhood friend Iceberg's business at the Galila Company. So what does that mean? It means that Frankie was actually way closer to danger than he ever knew for a lot longer than he knew. While the agents of CP9 had gone about their business of abducting Nico Robin and attempting to assassinate Iceberg, they end up discovering that Frankie was apprenticed to Old Tom, the man who built the Oro Jackson, which was of course the ship that the Pirate King himself sailed on. Not only this, they also know that Frankie and Iceberg have both read the plans to build the super advanced warship, the ancient weapon Pluton, and now Frankie in particular has the capability and the skills to start the job. So when they hear this, they capture Frankie, they take him along with Robin to Ennie's lobby for judgment. Frankie's strength at this point, along with most of the Straw Hats, was nowhere near someone like Rob Lucci. Nowhere near it. Frankie had a somewhat even, it was like kind of comical, not so serious scuffle with Luffy. It involved fire breathing and robot rocket punches, but that was before Luffy had even unlocked Gear 2nd, which kind of took him up to the level of Rob Lucci. Frankie was definitely not up to the task of defending himself against Rob Lucci, and definitely he can hold his own against one member of CP9, not against two, not against three, not against four. If he hadn't run into the Straw Hats, he would have been taken to Ennie's lobby, where he would begin being interrogated for the rest of his life or until he gave up the plans for Pluton. They might have forced him to build it even. After that, you just know that someone like Spandam would just execute him. Like, I don't want to think about that either, but... Or, he'd get someone from CP9 to execute him. The best case scenario, he gets sent to spend the rest of his life in the Impel Down. Probably on level 6 because they know he's got knowledge of Pluton and how to build it. But I don't want to think about that. I'm just going to imagine Luffy breaking him out. I don't care about the theme of this video at this point. It's making me sad thinking of the Straw Hats like this. Alright, the crew come across Brook as he's floating aimlessly with no shadow in the dreaded Florian Triangle. The theft of his shadow at the hands of Gecko Moria meant that if he ever left the misty, dark triangle, he would immediately die under the effects of the sun. Having his shadow stolen means the sun would just completely insta-kill him. One of the few ways you can actually kill Brook, it seems. Now, anyone that hasn't reread Brook's backstory lately really should. His pirating life started off quite fun and adventurous. There's music, there's laughter. Brook was years and years ago, he was the captain of a fencing squad. So he knew his way around a sword. That's how he kind of developed his style. They really took a turn for the worse in the Grand Line though when they encountered another pirate crew that used poisoned weapons. This is when they floated into the Florian Triangle. Now this is where it starts getting dark. Despite winning the battle, the poisoned weapons had already done their damage, and Brook had to watch on as him and the rest of his crew, including his captain Yorkie, slowly succumbed to the deadly poison. Brook passed away then after getting lost in the mist of the triangle and taking ages to find his body. His soul finally found it and returned, but it just withered away to the skeleton that we know and love today. He encountered the Shichibukai Gecko Moria, who used his OP Devil Fruit to steal Brook's shadow and put it in the corpse of Ryuma, the legendary samurai from Wano country. It being in this superhuman body meant that Brook was faced with a mirror of his own skills, but amped up with a legendary samurai's body. And the amped up body had a legendary sword, it had Shusui as well. He was unfortunately no match for this new being. No, Brook was completely outclassed by one of the mid-tier creeps of Gecko Moria. Not to mention how the last time he faced Moria himself, he had his shadow stolen. So Brook was then trapped to sail the Florian Triangle on a boat that he watched his entire crew slowly die on. He's trapped there, singing sad songs and trying to come to terms with the eternity of loneliness and undeath that he is faced with. There was that resistance force led by Lola hiding on Thriller Bark, but to be fair, they didn't stand a chance against the might of a Shichibukai and his crew. The only escape Brook has is to willingly sail out of the triangle. That's like the only choice that he would have. When he meets the sun, he'd go to Ash, he'd just pass away. How sorrowful, how mortifying, how lonely. That's what he would have been faced with for eternity had he not the good fortune of being come across by the Straw Hat Pirates. Let's try and build this up, I'm getting sad. Let's try and bring some positivity in. And wasn't it funny how Luffy just asked him to join immediately, just took one look at him and then asked him to join. Jinbei was imprisoned, he was stuck in Impel Down when Luffy first met him. He was put there after he refused to go to Marineford and stand against Whitebeard during the execution of Ace. It was thanks to Luffy's invasion of the impenetrable prison and the resulting mass breakout that led to Jinbei's freedom. Needless to say, the former warlord would have spent the rest of his days living as a prisoner in the worst level of Impel Down if you hadn't met Luffy. It's very likely that after refusing the call of the government to help, that his title of Shichibukai would have been stripped from him. Like, what's the point of him having it if he's in a cell anyway? They know he's not going to. With the death of Whitebeard, with Jinbei being imprisoned and also having his title stripped away, that means that Fishman Island is no longer under either of their protection. So you can speculate that without Luffy breaking them out, not only does Jinbei just rot in a cell and Impel Down for the rest of his life, but also his beloved Fishman Island would eventually come under attack by Big Mom or any number of roving pirates that are attempting to enter the New World that are strong enough to make it there. They're strong enough to challenge the powerful fisherman race. It's not good for Jinbei either. That's it, guys. We're done. That's every single Straw Hat member, every single current Straw Hat member. What a trip. I didn't expect this video to go for so long, but it has actually been fun. What it's done, it's actually really helped me to appreciate Oda's storytelling a bit more and the level of detail that he puts into these characters. They all have motivation. They all have backstories and hometowns with characters in them that all have their own backstories. The towns have their backstories. Like the world, it's so well fleshed out, and everything breathes. Everything has life. Everything has meaning. One thing is for certain though, without Luffy, life would just not be going so well for these Straw Hats. Thanks for watching the video, and if you've made it this far, then can you please consider liking and subscribing, because apparently that will help me out with the ancient weapon that is the YouTube algorithm. This is True Love. Have an amazing week, and I will see you all soon.